Welcome back, students. We are talking about limits on our freedom. As you recall, there are 5 freedoms listed in the First Amendment. What are they? Religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition to the government. But here we are talking about some limits on our freedoms. And you need to know the definition for treason. It's the crime of making war against the United States or giving aid and comfort to its enemies. It differs a little bit from sedition in that sedition is defined as a legal term for speech or actions that inspire revolt against the government. There's a history of treason, sedition acts, and things like this. The first one was passed in 1798. The Federalists were in power. They controlled Congress and the presidency. John Adams was the president, and they passed these laws that were supposedly intended to protect the country from domestic dissent during a war by outlawing false, scandalous, malicious statements about the U.S. government. But in reality, the new laws, well, they seemed that they were really designed to silence those nasty Democratic Republicans of Thomas Jefferson who were creating problems. However, Jefferson won the election in 1800, repudiating the Alien and Sedition Acts. But in our history, we've had similar laws. The Alien Enemies Acts, which was allowed the president to import individuals who are trying to do the United States government harm. And that is still in effect today. If you go out there and you're saying Al-Qaeda, you're raising funds for Al-Qaeda, or you are supporting the overthrow of the United States government and you're planning to do so, you've got weapons, you're going to be in trouble. The Alien Enemies Act could do you in. Freedoms of speech. We've talked a little bit about Schenck versus United States. The Espionage Act was passed during World War I. And again, just to refresh your memory, Schenck was a socialist. He was arrested, put in jail for distributing a flyer urging men not to sign up for the draft. He said, that's like slavery, don't do it. But the problem is America was at war during that time, World War I, and it did pose a danger. So Schenck's conviction was upheld by the Supreme Court. And then in Abrams versus United States, what is called dangerous speech, you may recall Oliver Wendell Holmes and said there has to be a clear and present danger. If there is a clear and present danger, then the government is within its power to make sure that you're not speaking. Now, so in Abrams versus United States, very similar case, dangerous speech was defined as it is only the present danger of immediate evil or an intent to bring it about that warrants or justifies Congress in setting a limit to the expression of opinion. And so during wartime, you don't have quite as much freedom of speech as you do when we're at peace. Whitney versus California, the state has the power to punish those whose words might encourage crime, disturb the peace, or otherwise harm the public welfare. The Smith Act, passed by Congress, outlawed calling for the forceful overthrow of the United States or organizing or joining a group that held such views. It remains in force today, but it's very severely limited. It would be hard to convict somebody with the Smith Act. Brandenburg versus Ohio in 1969, the Supreme Court overturned its Whitney decision and ruled that speech must be allowed. Every kind of speech must be allowed unless it is likely to lead to immediate lawless action. So more and more freedom. Want to limit the government except during times when it's not appropriate to. How about the Radio and television. First Amendment in the media. Radio and television broadcasts have fewer First Amendment protections than print media. So radio and television, fewer protections, fewer First Amendment protections than what is in print. The government regulates the public airways. Now, there's a difference between broadcasting and narrowcasting. Broadcasting is there are only so many airways, and so ABC, CBS, NBC, those are broadcast through the air. But others like MSNBC, Fox News, things like that, are narrowcasting. They are only available on Dish or streaming or online or those type of things. They're not broadcast. And the FCC grants license to those who wish to use the public airways broadcasting in certain language and content they do limit or prohibit. The cable systems, again, don't use public airways, and they're given greater freedom than broadcasters. If I want to watch the MAZ, I can put up a couple of rabbit ears on my television and I can watch it. I can't do that with Fox News. So there's a difference between broadcasting and narrowcasting. The internet is also less, because of that, is less subject to government regulation. Government has tried to limit pornography on the internet, but they've been pretty much unsuccessful. And in 1997, in the Reno versus American Civil Liberties Union, the Supreme Court rejected a law that sought to regulate internet pornography because users are not likely to encounter offensive content by accident, and because the law violated the First Amendment guarantee of free speech. So, especially with the internet, limiting pornography has become very problematic, very much so. A prior restraint is defined as a government action that seeks to prevent materials from being published before they're published. Neer versus Minnesota in 1931, the Supreme Court ruled that the state of Minnesota could not stop Neer from publishing a newspaper prior to its publication because of the likelihood that it would contain information that was untrue. So here Neer wants to publish something, it might be untrue, and so the state of Minnesota has a law that says you can't print something that is false. And so we're not going to allow you to print it. Well, you can't do that before they print it. Now, after they print it, you might be able to say that was false, and then you could arrest them, but you can't invoke prior restraint on them before they print it. Now, this is a good case, too, of incorporation. Notice this is Minnesota. Well, they are incorporating here through the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court is incorporating through the 14th Amendment the First Amendment right to a free press or to free speech. So all kinds of things come into play there. But prior restraint is almost always unconstitutional. And this was tested in 1971, New York Times versus United States. Richard Nixon tried to halt the publication of the Pentagon Papers, as Attorney General did, by saying these were classified documents, they were stolen. New York Times went ahead, Washington Post went ahead and printed those materials, and the Nixon administration was trying to say, well, wait a minute, they don't have the right to do that. Went all the way to the Supreme Court, 8-1 decision, and the Supreme Court said, you can't stop them from publishing. Symbolic speech is the communication of ideas through symbols and actions. The court has protected this as long as it doesn't pose a major threat to property or public order. For instance, in Stromberg versus California, the Supreme Court ruled that a California law restricting a woman from displaying a red flag as a sign of opposition to organized government or support a communist government against democratic government of the United States was an overly vague and unconstitutional restriction on free speech. California had passed a law saying you can't do that, and the Supreme Court said, you can't. Tinker versus Des Moines, dealing with high school students, yeah, they wanted to wear a black armband to school to protest the war in Vietnam. And went all the way to the Supreme Court. They got suspended, by the way. They got thrown out of school. Said, hey, don't come back with that armband on. They appealed it to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court ruled in favor of the students, saying that they do not check their political rights, their free speech, although it was symbolic, they don't check it at the schoolhouse door. So the Supreme Court ruled against the Iowa School District and in favor of the Tinker kids. And then Texas v. Johnson in 1989, Johnson burns an American flag. There's a parade, and he just sets that thing on fire right there in downtown Dallas. Texas has a law against defaming the American flag. They arrest him, and he appeals all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, yeah, we don't like it, but he can do it. And that's part of his symbolic free speech. And then freedoms of assembly and petition get short shrift usually, but notice that Congress shall make no right that will abridge the freedom of speech or press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress. Two things, peacefully assembling and petitioning government for redress. Young versus Oregon. Supreme Court rules that just because you go to a meeting of the Communist Party, there's wanting to overthrow the government of the United States and to replace it with not a democratic government, but a communist government, just because you go to that meeting does not mean necessarily that you're going to be arrested, that you can be arrested, which DeYoung was. Edwards versus South Carolina is a civil rights case, and the Supreme Court ruled that students who were meeting to talk about what they could do as African Americans to get equal rights, this is 1963, and they had a big parade and all these people around them. Well, the police arrested those having the parade because they were saying, they were not violent, but they might incite violence. Supreme Court, you can't do that. Those students have to be given their constitutional rights to assembly and petition the government for redress. There are some limits on assembly and petition. Yeah, you can have reasonable restrictions. Let's say we want to have a march in downtown Macon right during rush hour. You can't do that. They can limit the times and the manner and the place that you have your assemblies. And the government may require you a permit. That's okay too. And as long as they do this, regardless of the message, it doesn't matter whether you're a member of the Black Panthers or you're a member of the KKK, you have the right to peaceably assemble. But you might have to get a permit, you might have to get a manner of place, you have to specify a place, and they can't discriminate. They can't treat one group differently than they treat the other. And then there's freedom of association. And this is the right to join with others, share ideas, and work toward a common purpose. NAACP, this came under fire in Alabama. Alabama, back in 1958, said, hi, we want the names of all the people who are part of the NAACP here in Alabama. And so they tried to get that, and they wouldn't give it up. And so it went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that forcing the release of the names of the NAACP members would harm the freedom to the association. So if you have a secret club, it can be secret. You don't have to give out the name. And then this really does come down to public, should prayer in public schools be prohibited? Or should prayer be allowed in public schools? Should students be able to take their Bibles to public schools? Should teachers be able to take their Bibles to public schools? These are things you got to think. You got to think it. It's all going to be up to you and your generation to decide, how do we represent Christ in all of this? And so these are not just theoretical questions. It's for you.